Hello, everybody. So here we have another talk on Alone Together. We're thinking here about some chord scale things, and we're going to do a bit of listening. If you're on the listening on the podcast, we are going to do all this kind of orally and talk through it and think about how this tune progresses, and have a couple ideas of what chord scales you might use, and so thinking about the chord progression and some note choices on for improvising. Okay, this is also available in video format, and I'm streaming live to YouTube. So if you want to check it out there, I would welcome you to do that. And so the channel is youtube.com/fretprints. And it's part of the member area overview and analysis. So if you want to check that out, can come join our community of guitar folks. All right, so we left off with G minor, and we talked about 8 bars. So now we're going to think about the next few changes. So we have B minor 7 going to an E7. Okay. In this case, I'm playing an E9 there. So when you see those kinds of intervals with the root notes, let's say, so B to E, that forms a perfect fourth. You could also do the inverse of that, which would be B down to E, and that is a perfect fifth, descending. So when you have that interval and its inverse, like we have here, B to E, so that's a little bit of a clue that might have a 2/5 progression happening. And then we look at the chord quality of B minor 7, and we find that we have a minor type chord, minor 7. And then we're headed to E7, right? So those two chord qualities with that interval with the root note gives us an idea that we have a 2-5 type of a progression. Okay, so when we think about B minor 7, we can fill that in okay, with the Dorian sound. So we can think of this in terms of the key of 3 sharps. Okay, and then when we get to the E7, right, then we have more of a Mixolydian type of sound, and we're pulling from that same group of notes, the um, Mixolydian. So when you think about this, we want to be aware of the 7 notes that we're using. Let's say in this case, we want to also be aware of how those notes relate to a harmony in a given moment. So that's why we can think about, okay, B minor 7, and think about what are the consonances and dissonances there. And then when we go to E7, without necessarily even playing, from the root note to the root note, then we can think about how everything relates to a chord at a given moment. So that's sort of the strength that um, knowing chord scales will provide you, is this that level of awareness. So we want to think about it as it lays out on the instrument we play, but also just listening. So one thing you can do there is loop a sound. It could be with a guitar looper, um, or looping in your digital audio workstation, or finding something like iReal Pro or Band in a Box. I'm sure there are other things out there, um, but kind of looping a sound like a B minor and just kind of exploring that can be a good practice. All right, so next up we have G minor 7, and then that is moving to C7. I'm playing a C9 here. So let's think about those intervals between the G and the C. So G, C. Okay, so that's up a perfect fourth. G to C, um, down. That's a perfect fifth down. So the direction is important. So if it's going down, it needs to be a fifth. If it's going up, it needs to be a perfect fourth. So that is one of the clues you want to look for as far as 2-5 progression. And then you take the quality of the chord. Is it major, minor? dominant. And think about that. So here we have a minor chord followed by a dominant seventh chord. So that's another 2-5 progression. We can think about, do that again. Think about the G minor 7, and then think about the key of 1 flat, right? And how that all sounds together. So okay. So that gives us the Dorian kind of sound. Okay, and then we have C7. Okay, and that's again the Mixolydian kind of sound. Now, one thing on guitar that we want to think about with that is if we play something, let's say with a certain shape on the instrument on the neck, like certain location. So if we play, let's say in 7th position, and we're thinking about that change, we could technically play that same shape and shift our position. And that might be something that's good to do, especially if you're a beginner. So we just kind of take the shape, or you could play almost the same thing. Or something very similar, and just kind of use that contour and move the position of the neck. One thing I would recommend doing though is trying to stay in a position. Ultimately, you want to have control to do whatever you feel like doing and be able to move um, throughout the neck, with whatever you want to do. But um, another good practice is to see if you could stay in the same position, or maybe within a position or two, and take the change like that. So I'm going to stay in 7th position here. Okay, so my first finger has stayed over the 7th fret, and then I work through those changes depending on what's happening there. So, or depending on what the chord changes are. So that's something that's helpful to do. I'm gonna take a. I am streaming live, so I'm gonna take a look um, at look for any comments or questions. So I welcome your questions as we go through. All right, so next up we have the F chord. So let's start with F and think about the major scale, and this is Ionian that I'm playing. Another scale or mode that works or is compatible with that sound is Lydian, which has the sharp 11. Okay, so our next chord that's mentioned here, and I'm referencing the standards real book on this. So they have a couple of chords here in parentheses. They have an F augmented. They also have a B9. So let's focus on that B9. We can also relate that B9 to a F7 if we want to as well. Okay, so let's talk about B9. Okay, so the scale that I just played there is known as the Lydian dominant. Okay, so a lot like Mixolydian, but it has a raised fourth. So it has the raised fourth, gives us the Lydian type of sound, and then the dominant seventh, the flat seven. And that is coming out of one of the modes of the melodic minor scale. So F sharp, melodic minor there. So another little thing that you could think about with this, and this can be a little bit of a challenge to understand, but it's really not too complicated. But it is hard, I think, when you're first kind of checking it out. So if you have this interval of a tritone, so that's this interval. So it's a pretty dissonant interval. It's also, you could say, symmetric, because if you remember, we had two notes earlier, and we looked at the inverse of the interval and found, one was a fourth, one was a fifth. With tritone, the inverse is the same distance. So it's kind of like the halfway point of an octave. You just kind of divide it right in half. So it has the same distance going down or up. So if you think about that, and then we think about attaching, placing an F below it. So we get an F7 kind of sound. So that means that E flat is the flat 7. Okay. And then A is the third. Okay. Now, if you take the root note down tritone, replace the F, kind of substituting it with B, you get another dominant seventh chord. So we have those same two notes on top. Okay. Now the E flat, you might name a D sharp, same tone though, and then the A, called the flat 7. It's a similar kind of sound, right? So that's sort of an interesting phenomenon. So that's called a tritone substitution. So F7 and B7. apply that to different places. But that B7, let's take that to the B flat major 7 next. All right, so we have B flat major 7. Okay, and let's think about so that's the Lydian sound, and that's the one that has the same notes as our key center, key of 1 flat, D minor. So that's something to just kind of think about and explore there. So we have that chord scale there. All right, so far a progression, B minor, E7, G minor, C7, say F, playing an F major 9 there. Let's say B flat 7, or B7 rather, B7, B flat major 7. Okay. And then we have A7 next up. Now the chord that they list in this book is A7 flat 5 and flat 9. So you can actually play this. Here's another little interesting thing that you can do: play a first inversion of E flat 7 and put it over an A. That follows this same kind of phenomenon that we talked a little bit about earlier, right? It's because E flat is a tritone away from A, right? So they're going to share the thirds and the sevenths with dominant type chords, since it has that interval of a tritone again. Okay, so when it comes to soloing on the tune, you might stretch out and try different things, different areas of the tune. And dominant seventh chords are sort of sounds where you can really stretch out and really do a lot, and you know, you might even consider all of the 12 tones, or just try different types of modes and things. But let's talk a little bit about the altered scale on this one, since they have this chord listed. The flat 9 and the flat 5. Okay, so we have A7. So I'm going to leave out the 5th on this. It's really interesting about the altered scale, like its name kind of suggests. Everything that you can alter is altered. So you say A, go up from A, you have A, flat 9, sharp 9. So notice no 9, but we have a 9, a flat 9, and a sharp 9. The third, that is part of our core sound of our voicing. Okay, so we need that. And then sharp 4, you could also rename that as a flat 5. Sharp 5, which you could also rename as a flat 13. Flat 7, that's part of the chord, and then the root note. So you take the core sound of the A7, and then anything that's a 9, 4, 13, 9, 11, and 13, you change those. So the 9 kind of goes in both directions. 11 gets bumped up, 13 gets lowered. And then enharmonically, you could think about the the sharp 11 as a flat 5, or the flat 13 as a sharp 5. Okay, so let's get to this will be, I think, the last chord that we'll discuss in today's talk. And let me take a quick look, make sure I don't have any questions. Okay, but I do welcome your questions if you have any. All right, so the next chord here is the D major 7. Okay, so remember our key center is D minor, right? So D is our tonic, and the quality, the chord quality, is D minor. So right now we have a D major, so that's something different. And we heard earlier that F sharp on it. I think I talked briefly about it. So that's a major third above D, right? Whereas if it's a minor third, then we get a minor kind of sound. So we can call this the parallel major. Okay, so let's play the major scale on the sound and see how it goes. Okay, so there we have Ionian, and that's the major scale and key of 2 sharps. Okay, so we can call that the parallel major. So we have the parallel minor, parallel major, and then you have the relative minor, relative major. So in D minor, the relative major would be F major. In F major, the relative minor is D minor. The parallel major of D minor is D major. Also F, which, again, back to our key 1 flat, F is the relative major, and its parallel minor is F minor, key of 4 flats. Okay, so that's an important distinction, the parallel versus the relative. Okay, and so then we're heading over to set up the minor. So we have I'll just talk maybe briefly about it before we wrap up. But the chords that are listed on this in this book, the standards real book, we have E minor 7, and then we have A7, flat 9. So dominant 7 chords with flat 9s can go to minor or major. They have a particular sound that kind of sets the ear up to expect minor. So that's part of its effect. And in this case, we are headed back to minor. So we go and we repeat the section that we just talked about over these two talks. Okay, so we had 8 bars and then 6 bars. So a 14 measure A section. And then that gets repeated. Okay, so in the next talk, we will work on the bridge section. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for checking this out. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, check out the podcast. If you're listening to this as a podcast, check out the YouTube channel if you haven't already. I might play a little bit before we head off. All right, everybody. Thanks for attending this talk. And I will likely be back with another one tomorrow. So stay tuned for that, and be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. Thanks.